Welcome everyone to our episode number 4 of our Conscious Health podcast. In today's episode, we have an honored guest, Soulara Sevier, and we are going to discuss healing the mind, reconstructing limiting beliefs for business growth with Reiki. Thank you, Soulara, for being here, and thank you, Natasha, of course.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's so wonderful to have you, and so wonderful, David, to be standing beside you as well throughout this, which is wonderful. I'm going to quickly introduce you on your bio, and then I'm going to hopefully ask you to expand on that because I'm really, really excited to hear your journey. And Soulara is a Reiki master teacher, oracle, a visionary leader, understands the profound connection between personal growth and the cyclical flow of energy of ourselves and the earth. And her journey as a retired cardiac nurse, healer, and speaker ignited a passion to empower high impact leaders and to embrace self-healing and personal development. Through her online community, Heal, Grow, Inspire, Lead, Soulara guides these leaders to redefine their enoughness and unlock their highest potential. And Soulara's approach is deeply rooted in the concept of chakras, energy centers within our bodies that mirror the Earth's vibrational field. Just as the season shifts, our chakras can become imbalanced. And Soulara teaches to identify these blockages within their chakras and guides them on a journey of realignment. And this allows them to become more grounded, tap into their intuition, and express their creativity, all qualities of true, servant leader. And this holistic platform extends Soulara's vision beyond individual healing. It serves as a haven for transformation, offering experiences like Usuri Reiki training and chakra balancing workshops by integrating practices like intuitive channeling and skin. I don't know how to say this, carotenoid testing. You're going to have to correct me on that, which can reflect energetic imbalances. And Soulara bridges the gap between the physical and the spiritual realms, which fits this podcast perfectly. And Soulara emphasizes the importance of aligning our personal growth journeys with which empowers leaders to cultivate the self-awareness and energetic flow needed to inspire positive change within themselves and the world. So what an amazing mission you are on, and what an amazing journey you've been on, it sounds like it. Can you elaborate a little bit and tell us a little bit more from going from something very, very medical to really kind of like, and I'm assuming combining both the metaphysical and just really expanding your healing capabilities?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Natasha. And David. So when I go back to just being a young child growing up in the Midwest, I was a middle child. And so I had this natural inclination to care. And so, I remember braiding my sister's hair, doing certain things to kind of help facilitate, just nurturing and growth. And I knew I wanted to help people. And so seeing my pediatrician, and I'm going to try to make the story a little bit brief, but I have to share insights how I got into nursing. So I remember seeing my pediatrician and thinking to myself, like, wow, this is a really powerful place to be in, to be able to help people. I remember seeing her nurse, and I said, I'm going to be a doctor. And so I knew that it wouldn't be a pediatrician, but I felt that since people were naturally drawn to me and would tell me stories and ask for guidance and assistance, I said, well, maybe psychiatry. I think I'll do psychiatry. And so at a young age, I really set out on that path of going, being a doctor and going to pre-med and all of that at a school in the south of the United States. And upon arriving, I realized that, there's a freedom aspect to me. There's a part of me that has to be free and prioritize self-care. And this is terminology that I wasn't necessarily familiar with from a verbal standpoint, being in college and, you're signing up, you're going to go to medical school after college. But I knew that when I got there and I was just told certain things about residency and all of this, I said, there's something that's very, I felt like a blanket was over me, like energetically. And I said, no, I have to be free. I don't want to be on call. And those things did not align with my core energies. And so I was able to still continue. I dropped the pre-med portion, ended up with a degree in psychology and chemistry. And then upon graduating, life does what it does. And I had an opportunity to attend nursing school. And so upon that was when I decided, I can travel with nursing. Gives me a little bit more freedom. I can still provide care for my patients, but at a certain time it can stop and I can care for myself. And so that is what inspired me to pick up sort of that stethoscope in that way, because I needed that partition, because I knew that prioritizing myself and, making sure that I was rested and cared for, that I can be at my best with my patients. And so after 16 and a half years and sort of a spiritual awakening in between that time frame, I realized that I wasn't taking as good a care of myself as I thought. And so that is when I got more into the energetic aspect of things. And I intuitively heard the word Reiki one day. And I said, wow, that's interesting. It sounds familiar, but I don't really know what it is. And so upon Googling it, it resonated so highly with me. I said, oh, this is it. This is what I need in my life. And so it was at that time that I began my journey of researching and finding out who would be that Reiki master teacher to initiate me. It was a beautiful story behind that, but I did find her. And in 2020, I was able to retire from nursing and pursue preventive measures for holistic healing, with Reiki being at the forefront since that time.
Beautiful. What an amazing journey you've been.
Thank you. And it's still happening, but
oh yeah, it doesn't stop.
It doesn't, right? Absolutely.
I so relate now much more to your story, because just recently I also had a call to study Reiki and to start my preparation into becoming a master Reiki also teacher.
Oh, beautiful.
And I have been taking it slowly, because I need to soak up all the information, and also sensing what is changing, because as you mentioned, everything changes when you open those channels of energy and you start perceiving more things, being more intuitive, and also accepting changes, something that is difficult sometimes to accept. And just knowing that we are all vibrations and perceiving those things. So my follow-up question would be, how do you help people now with those intuitive skills in terms of the corporate world to understand what is blocking them?
That is a lovely question. When we think about the corporate world, we think about people who may be more based with their regular thinking. They call things such as Reiki maybe woo-woo, or I don't know. They kind of have a little trepidation when we deal with spiritual aspects. And so fortunately, I have had the experience of being both in corporate healthcare, which is essentially nursing, and then knowing sort of the thoughts and behaviors and challenges that people face, as well as the spiritual aspect, and knowing that everything is tied to energy centers in our bodies, which are our chakras, and also other meridian lines. And so my mom used to tell me when I was growing up, she would say, you have such a way of explaining things. You really should, find out how to tap into that. And so I come from a line of teachers. She was a teacher and grandmother and aunt. And so no surprise here, Reiki master teacher, I wanted to go all the way. And so I just start from a core understanding that we are all energetic beings. There is a lot of science behind that now. There's the, double slit experiment that shows how, a thought can be both a particle and a wave. We can get very scientific with it, but the whole point of it is to understand a thought is energetic. And by the time it leaves, our brain, it's sending out an impulse of energy. And even when we look at our bodies and our atoms, thinking about how our protons and neutrons and electrons, at the fundamental core, we are energy, and we're communicating with those thoughts energetically. And so depending on the environment that I'm in and the organization that I'm speaking to, I just really hone in on that with language that makes sense to them, but sort of highlighting that we're already energetic and, creating conversation in a way that brings about these energy centers that could deal with, for instance, limiting beliefs or fear of failure for someone who is a business executive. Where did that come from? What was your birth order? Where in our body do you feel that? Because everybody may feel it in different places. Even though I can say, generally speaking, a fear of failure might be the crown chakra with dealing with the higher awareness and that failure isn't real, it could also be attached to a unhealed trauma in the root chakra, maybe when the person was a child and experienced, being made fun of or something like that. And so using my intuition with conversation, using the language that supports their current belief system, I can have a better understanding of how to move forward and bring in language that makes sense. And again, that hallmark foundation is everything being energetic, and we can correct things that have been sort of misaligned or things that are blocked. The body was created to heal itself. It loves to be in flow and balance. We're in the month of October. We're getting ready to head into Libra season. Today is a new moon slash solar eclipse. So we're dealing with this balance. And so the body loves to do that, have homeostasis. And so with that, I'm honored to be in the, work of a Reiki master teacher and to help facilitate that balance and harmony in the body.
Beautiful. I have a question for both of you, in the sense that, so when I found Reiki, I'm very lucky to have been born into a family that's spiritually gifted. A bunch of healers in the sense of hands-on healing and all that maybe. I'm also Portuguese. So for me, that aspect was always, the terminology was quite different. And when I found myself at a place of burnout, I thought, no, there's something wrong happening energetically, because even though I was born into a spiritual family, I never thought that I could live a spiritual life in using my gifts to support others. And I also went off and I did all the corporate, kind of a thing, and then ended up at burnout and thought, no, wait, something spiritually is blocked and I need to go back to my foundation. And I did the same, typed in, what is hands-on healing into Google. Google's an awesome tool for Reiki, and Reiki popped up as well, and it must be Reiki. And it was beautiful because it helped me along in my healing journey. And even though there was always a basis of some sort of metaphysical, back then it was that you've got to trust it. Like you said, we didn't have the terminology for everything. It was just like, you've just got to trust it, kind of a thing to, Reiki putting that into some sort of a form, and, the first 21 days of really starting to allow for that healing. Even within that, I still very much had a corporate mindset. Thank goodness things have changed in the sense of I've been meditating for the last 5 days. And so here's the action, where's the reaction, and then I started to realize, wait, it's a collaboration, it's co-creating, it's more healing that needs to be done. So my question to both of you, and I know this is a long-winded story, but it's just, how did you go from very much a medical kind of basis and foundation to now looking at, okay, wait a minute, there is this, and on a spiritual level, I know that you've always been healers, always meant to be, but how did you go from that process of going, okay, something very, very tangible, to now looking at the metaphysical side of things and allowing both of them to join in? Because a lot of the medical practitioners that I work with, it's still almost kind of I need to put it to the side and I can't tell anyone what I'm doing, because people are not, it's about credibility. You start to lose that credibility where somebody's like, it's not tangible. This person's off their rocker. And I know that certain of the practitioners that I know, their licenses have been threatened. So they've had to very much navigate a world where it's accepted but not accepted, but it's a tool that can be used. How have you two found that? I'll start with you, Soulara.
Okay, I was going to say, David, you want to go first? But sure. So my answer comes with a story. And this gets into sort of that healing journey that began when I heard the word Reiki. So
Mm-hmm.
I had been a nurse for about, I would say about 14 years. And so, just think about energetic toll, think about just sort of from a corporate perspective, everything needing to be balanced as far as a nurse is concerned. And I wasn't doing a very good job of that. My eating habits were not the best because number one, I had to rush to eat quite often, or, just go prolonged periods of time without eating, and, definitely not being hydrated very well. So very early on, I just experienced this depletion of energy, and it just continued, and actually got worse and worse and worse, to the point where all I could do was muster up the energy to go into the hospital and then to go home. And as most people know, nursing is a 12-hour job, and, usually preparing and then coming back home also adds on another 2 hours both ways. And so it took a toll on me over time. And so I would say about my 14th year in, I remember being at the hospital, and I was sitting at the nurse's station, and I was getting ready to stand up and go check on a patient. And I was actually working on, I think it was a heart and lung unit. And so when I stood up, I actually had to grab a hold of the nurse's station because I almost fell, like I almost tipped over, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like, what is that? I feel very faint. And so I sat down and I started looking around, like, did anybody see me? And I sort of contemplated, okay, do I just let this pass, or do I need to go and get some assistance? And just that inner voice was letting me know that that wasn't normal, especially since I felt dizzy. And of course, being a cardiac nurse, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, circulation, pre-syncope or near fainting. So I said, okay, let me tell the nurse manager. So upon telling her, my life changed. I became a patient. And so I remember the wheelchair coming up to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is so crazy. I got in the wheelchair and had my big nurse badge on, but it didn't matter. I, had to go down to the emergency department and was really treated as a patient. The same tests and blood draws and things that I was doing on patients was now being done to me, EKGs, all of these things. And so I actually had to spend the night. I could not go home. And I was terrified from the standpoint of, I've never been a patient. I've never spent a night in the hospital. What is happening? And so I had a moment to pause and think about my life and just the stress that I was putting on myself, and really wasn't doing a good job of addressing. And so in the morning, I took a cardiac stress test and, just all kinds of things to ensure that whatever caused me to have this upset or this moment of near fainting, that they could kind of see it. And I had a heart monitor and everything. Everything that I do for my patients was, of course, done to me. And so fortunately, thankfully, there was nothing that was found. They just said, oh my gosh, we don't know what happened. We're going to discharge you. We're going to give you a referral to a cardiologist. And so I knew at that moment, things had to change. And so I began just Googling, making sure, alternative medicine specialists, all kinds of things holistically to help me. I began that journey immediately. And so upon seeing a chiropractor and being put on proper supplementation and things of that nature, that began that physical healing journey. And at that point, I heard the word Reiki. It was during that time of nurturing my physical body that I was able to give it a break. And therefore, my spirit man could sort of, step out front and say, okay, we're knocking on your heart. We've been kind of letting you know that there's something greater, there's something more. And so upon hearing the word Reiki, and as you mentioned, Natasha, the rest is history. So for me, that crossover was more of a physical sort of scare that caught my attention. And once all of the scientific methods were addressed and they found nothing, all the enzymes were negative, it said, okay, this is something else. This is something spiritual then. So, because there's clearly something wrong. And so for me, I was able to take that awareness and then transition over to a space of preventive maintenance and energy healing.
Beautiful. What an amazing journey. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
I relate also to many points of your story because I didn't have a breakdown per se when I was also in the corporate world, but I felt just completely depressed, let's say, depressed without energy to go and work, without motivation. And I just felt that my body was telling me something, and as you mentioned, your body sometimes tells you enough is enough, and that's it. I mean, you need to find other things to do. I also come from a family of teachers, so I started to teach again and to have more freedom in my schedule and just to let things flow and go into the spiritual realm. I wasn't spiritual at all, of course, in those days. And I started just with meditation, with Buddhism. That was something that brought me to the spiritual side. Reading books of Buddhism. I had a friend that was doing courses and workshops in Buddhism, and she invited me to those talks, and I felt that peace inside of me, and that piece led me to find out more about these uh, spiritual things and the spiritual realm, let's say, because it's a lot of things. And now that I'm writing or that I'm researching more about this spirituality and everything that is connecting the dots, I now can see, just as many of us can see if we are here talking about this, is that science will never catch up with what our bodies and the energy are doing for us. And unless we give up this fight between the two sides, between spirituality or science, we are not going to understand that joining the forces is much better, and it will heal many more individuals in terms of understanding where are the blockages of energy, because that is also science. I mean, it's also going to that research mindset or scientific mindset of exploration, of testing things, and just seeing by yourself that by removing certain blocks of energy, your body and your mind starts to have a lot more clarity and more flow in the things that you are attracting to your life.
Beautiful. Well, thank you both for sharing. It's like incredible. I always get curious and I get really excited when I do have somebody from the medical field come in and experiment or try or ask questions, because I'm like, you're a natural healer. There's like so much potential to you, and there's that background. So I get really excited to see that. And I'm working the opposite way. I'm trying to learn the medical, the physical aspect of what's happening on the spiritual, mental, and emotional side of things. So a lot of the times I'm like, hey, David, how does this work? And then he'll be like, yeah, like this and like this and like this, which is amazing. The other aspect from the spiritual perspective, I don't think it's ironic that you were a cardiac nurse. So how has that journey completed into matters of the heart to now connecting into the spiritual side that you've been working with Reiki and all your knowledge and your wisdom?
You're absolutely right. There are no accidents. And oh my gosh, just thinking about now from an energetic perspective and how the heart has literally a mind of its own, literally the neurons that are on the heart and how they just conduct this electromagnetic field that is very high in attraction, very high in energy, even more so than the brain, right? So this heart space is just amazing. And so we talk about attraction. We talk about living this life that we desire, having these outcomes that we desire. And so it has a lot to do with the heart being, and when I say the word pure, it's not from a religious standpoint. It's from a standpoint of being clear, being open to the possibilities, not having blockages such as regret or grief. That's a big one, right? In the world, since 2020, a lot of us have seen things from a global perspective. And so if we allow those lower frequencies to sort of inundate our electromagnetic field, we're going to be drawing in more circumstances and people and things that sort of agree with that energetic frequency. And so the heart has an ability to supersede vibrations and to amplify what it is that we are feeling on the inside. And so it's also not a mistake that the heart is in the center of the chakras from the
Mm-hmm.
spiritual perspective, but then also physically speaking in the center of the body. And so when we think about doing that work to help clear those lower chakras, making sure that we have a plan in place, because let's just be honest, when we think about healing, it's a journey, right? It's not going to be a one and done. Let me get this one Reiki session and I've got it, it's cleared. Could it happen? I'm open to the possibility, but likely there's going to need to be some support from that. And so as this journey continues and the healing is taking place and the energies are aligning and moving up, the chakra system and getting into the heart space, it can amplify more positivity, more creativity as we begin to express with our throat chakra, have this awareness with our third eye chakra, and then this crown being open to so much magnificence with the cosmos and just what our purpose is can really help to balance our purpose and who we are and what we came to do on this beautiful planet. So for me, I had that physical experience with the heart and even having to face my own heart from a physical perspective. And now from an energetic perspective and understanding just that magnetic nature and how it can amplify who I am as a being. I really am honored to have that awareness and share that with clients and how that can manifest for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that, especially as we're moving from an era of relying only on our thoughts and dropping into our body and into our heart. I think it's something that we've all avoided, even in the corporate world. It's like, and I came from a place where like business doesn't have a heart, you just need to show up. And it's like, hang on a minute. The business is a whole entire entity, a being. It's sometimes we refer to it as a baby. That heart needs to be in there, whether you own it or work for it or in alignment with it. But I love that we've also, and you're going to be so busy because we've also been so accustomed to suppressing those emotions, right? And kind of like, nope, just shove it in somewhere and just keep going. Your mind controls your body. Let's just keep going. But looking at that from that other perspective of absolutely your mind controls your body, so you can heal your body with your mind as well. But that dropping into that heart space, I think that vulnerability is a scary space for a lot of people. And yeah, so yeah, I love that you're on this mission and very, very heart-centered. And yeah, I love that you found it through working with the heart and focusing there. Because my focus was craniosacral. So it was very much kind of like working with the nervous system and looking at that aspect of spirituality. So I love that you connected in with the heart as well.
Well, thank you. And thank you for actually bringing that to the forefront. It's one of those things that I sort of subconsciously knew, but I hadn't thought about it in the way of, okay, cardiac nerves, and then just kind of focusing on that central aspect of the heart chakra and what it does and what it can do. So thank you for bringing that to the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome.
And following that line that you brought, Natasha, and thank you also for bringing that up. How do you explain also these relationships between the chakras and the blockages of energy to an employee or to a CEO or to a director, whatever the position is in the corporate world, when they are stuck in one place and they keep finding that wall with either decisions or they have problems with an individual, whatever it is the case that is blocking the energy, how do you explain that? Because your example of the heart and also being a heart cardiac nurse and also those blockages of energy and that faint sensation was more than clear. That was your energy speaking out loud and trying to make some sense into you, let's say. So how do you make sense into those people that they are left brain mainly, and move them to the right brain?
Oh my goodness, that is such a powerful question. And, you mentioned something very important about how what people are experiencing is just the projection of that energy, right? If there are blockages within the body, there are going to be some mirrored blockages outside in the environment. And what does that look like? And so I work backwards with that. And so, I'd like to know up front, I will ask the client, okay, what is the challenge at this time that we would like to address first? And so depending on what their answer may be, so for example, if someone talks about, I'm not really clear in my, vision for this particular project, like there's confusion, like I have writer's block and things of that nature, I go into that a little bit more because that's a more of a mental higher chakra sort of challenge. And so I get into the third eye chakra, for example, I get into the crown chakra, for example, and also what's happening in the environment. What sort of things are they eating? How are they maintaining and practicing self-care, if at all? Because, as Natasha mentioned earlier, quite often it's just, show up and, you do good and you don't, meditation. I think now we're kind of easing up and we're more accepting of practices that help, sort of that holistic wellness. But overall, I think there's still that language of, not admitting that there's a part of themselves that needs to be looked at and sort of worked with for the greater good of the company and themselves as a whole. And so if we look at that example that I gave, and there's indecisiveness and lack of innovation and creativity, there's more a mindset of movement. I found that movement of the body is very helpful in getting the person to feel comfortable about what we're going to be talking about. So I will, get them to move in certain ways, and those movements are kind of connected to the chakras within themselves. And so we're moving the hips, we're moving, the core, we're moving the root and things of that nature, even with the head. And so with that, that helps to kind of program that sort of the body we're going to be releasing now. Get ready. If we're moving our head and we're putting it in circular motions, one way and then the other, we're sort of signaling to that part of the body, we're getting ready to work with the energy here. So with that intention already, there's already an ease of flow. There's already some of that tension beginning to release. The client is able to say, okay, I don't know why, but I feel better. I haven't moved like that in, all week. The breath is so important. Taking deep breaths. There's a particular yogic breath that helps to balance both the right and left hemispheres. We talked about someone who's more left-sided in thinking versus right side. So I will bring in the breath and how to breathe in through one nostril and then breathe out through the other. And so we do cycles of that. That helps to balance sort of that left brain, right brain thinking. And then I get more into the questions. Maybe that wall is broken down just a little bit. They don't feel as though they're sort of on the stage and the bright lights are on them. So they're able to say, well, I've been feeling a certain way. Maybe things are going on at home that I don't have the answer to. Maybe that's the reason. Maybe we should start there. And so from movement, from sort of breaking into those rigid thoughts of, okay, well, I don't know who is this lady, what is she going to be doing? I do sort of natural things that breathing, everybody does, right? We're just going to do it in a different way. Movement, everybody can do. We'll just do it in a gentle way and sort of isolate certain areas of our bodies. And then I can address, based on what they say, I can address the root cause. And then I bring in that intuitive part of me that can help them with ways to keep the healing energies flowing, because energy flows. The moment that we stop and we become rigid and blocked, there's sort of this backup of energy. And just like with our physical body, when things are not flowing properly, there's discomfort, there is dis-ease. And so everyone feels much better when things are flowing and moving, and there's more joy, there's more happiness, more of those higher frequencies. And so with that being said, not only is the client feeling much more better about themselves, because again, depending on what they say, I will give them the intuitive insights that come through, and then they can move into actionable steps. And when we meet up the following week, well, how do those steps go? Was there an affirmation that was given? Was there a food list that was given? Because I help my clients to eat from the rainbow, different spectrums of the rainbow, which of course are our chakras. And so if someone is having sort of those thoughts that are indecisive, we're going to focus more on those purple foods, those blue foods. We're going to decrease that sugar. We're going to decrease that alcohol if that's a particular challenge. So there's quite a bit, that should be taken into consideration, but it's very individualized in its approach, but very fundamental and helpful overall, again, not only for the person, but for the organization.
Great approach. And I think that, well, the first things that you do is doing also it's science, because it's moving the energy. It's moving the energy, and the energy of the emotions that are blocked need to start getting, let's say, a stretch. I just imagine the molecules getting a stretch and the cells
Yes.
getting a stretch, all of those things. And I was just thinking about also these new things that are coming besides Reiki, that are connecting also the dots between what we are made of from the universe, the energy of the universe, the stars, the alineation of the planets, and this human design that I have been also studying, and Gene Keys is another flow. And they talk about this space between the cells that they need to communicate in order to flow and to give nutrients to each other, and to synchronize into those timing clocks, which are the circadian rhythms and all of those things. So what you are doing is also synchronizing the things that they are doing with the food, with the sleep, with the surroundings, because taking into account the holistic way of seeing things is what going to integrate the person. I just imagine that a person that is in a blockage is just like a piece of the puzzle that is lost, and that is not finding the other pieces in his own puzzle. So that that for me is just assembling the person into a holistic way, no?
I love that,
Yeah.
David. Pieces to that person's puzzle. Love that.
No, absolutely beautiful. And do you think we're coming full circle? Because a lot of this knowledge has been carried by our ancestors that we've forgotten about, chosen to ignore, chosen a different path. And it's now, I think it's starting to surface into that reconnecting with nature once more, which I think is really, really important. And you spoke about it being a new moon today, and the last few months have been quite a roller coaster in the sense of pushing up patterns and limitations and blocks and intergenerational conditioning for all of us between retrograde and blue moons and everything aligning, which is absolutely amazing and hard sometimes, but so amazing in the sense of if we pay attention and are in observation, like you say, and start to put in that self-care aspect, it becomes really a journey about getting to know who we are and unpacking those, those molecules, and unpacking and really kind of like going within, which I think is important. And yeah, working with the seasons and with fall or autumn coming in, very much a shedding time. So it's by no accident that that movement and everything is coming in, and there's more of that awakening aspect of going, okay, there's more than life than this, and yeah, so I think all of this is quite timely. And like you say, all these new modalities that are coming in, because we're starting to expand and merge these modalities as well, and really look at them as our own. And as you say, and I'll let you answer this first, what do you think the future of medicine is? Because I've had a vision, but I'd love to know from both of your perspectives what you see the future of medicine being.
Wow. I've actually heard a similar question and also sort of had an epiphany of what that could look like. And I believe that the future of medicine is going to be spirit medicine. And even the combination of those words, spirit and medicine, like someone may say, well, what does that actually look like? So it looks like yoga and Reiki being, serving as the foundation for addressing energy blockages within the body. It looks like nutrition being the number one thing that doctors are leaning more towards for treating, if you will, symptoms of a dis-ease. It may look like, leaning more into purpose-driven lives. And what does that look like? tuning into those gifts that you already naturally came here with. Oftentimes we are, the longer we've been on the planet, we think about, well, what is it that I used to love to do growing up? What was it that I was good at, And sometimes you do have to lean more into those who grew up with you, a parent, friend, cousin, neighbor. What is it that I just did effortlessly? And getting back to that core grounding, that core gift, and seeing how that can answer some of the challenges that are here on the planet. I believe that if you're here, there's a purpose for not only healing yourself, but also the planet. I believe she needs our assistance. There's just been so much over the eons, right? Because there's just been a cyclical pattern happening for years and years, millions and millions of years. And so I agree, we are entering into that cycle where there is a global awareness of everything, animals and even plants, being sentient. And so this information that's coming in is just a relearning of it. I really do believe there is nothing new under the sun. We just may change the name. For instance, I love how you mentioned hands-on healing. Well, some people call that Reiki. Some people call that Qigong, right? There's different names for it based on the cultures.
Yeah.
But ultimately, as long as we are doing those methods that help to assist people, I think that's more of our focus and target, the outcome, the impact that it's creating in the lives of others. So I do believe that, medicine, the future of medicine is going to look very much holistic in nature. And we're going to be leaning more on those plants. Even the plants, everything has this frequency that's beautiful. It wants to heal and balance and renew. Even our crystals, our crystal friends, everything. And if we lean into those modalities, I do believe that we'll find just more of a balanced approach to well-being.
Beautiful.
I completely agree with that vision that you have, because the more we understand that we are not separate pieces of a bigger puzzle, the easier it's gonna be that we join forces and we help each other and we start understanding that we need to work, that there are so many fractals of information or replication of that information within us. The body works in ways that are cooperating with each other and communicating with each other. There is no competition, there is no ambition, there is no lack, there is no, let's say, envy, or all of those things that come from the external part or the ego part. They just don't fit into the design of our body. So if we just pay attention to more how we are constructed, how we work, how all these cells are communicating, how these organs have a timing, and they also are affected by the moon, by the seasons. That's where we understand that we connect with something that is bigger than us. And I also think that is what is gonna come. That we need to have an easier way to map ourselves in terms of the spiritual side, which are these new trends or new ways of thinking, like human design and gene keys. I was just talking with my mother that if we approach, for example, therapy in terms of psychological therapy with people with a map of how these people is designed by their own birth and by the alignment of the planets and all of those things, which are the design of each person, that would be amazing, because we know how they are designed. We know what are their qualities and their traits. There is no negative things. There are just light or shadow sometimes, and we move in between. But we would understand much better why we sometimes go to the shadow part or we go to the light, no? Which is what you do with your clients, no?
I absolutely agree. The individualized approach, that's important to remember and consider, because even in some of the medical modalities that are coming onto the scene now, it's very individualized. Previously, remember the food pyramid, and everybody needs X amount of protein, everybody needs to have X amount of milligrams of this particular grain. Well, research is showing that that's just not true for everyone. What may be a superfood for one person is an allergic reaction in someone else. And so just like the physical aspects and finding out what works for the individual, I love how you mentioned the gene keys and understanding that if we pay attention, there's a reason that I was born in December, with a Scorpio moon. There's a reason. And what does that mean? What did I come here with to discover about myself? How can I take those discoveries and help heal the world as well as myself? And as you said, David, which is just brilliant, if we all could work according to some semblance of that, I think that absolutely the world will begin this journey of healing from a massive perspective. And I think we really need that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely beautiful. And I've also seen a world where you look at somebody from an individual perspective, but you also look at them like physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and combine everything, like you say, a holistic approach. And it's so interesting that you talk about bringing in that astrological aspect. I actually I have an evolutionary astrologer that I work with, and I asked her to help me understand my children's charts. And they are so different, and to tackle and knowing what their mission is and how they function and what their needs are. And I mean, one of my daughters has an autoimmune issue that she's resolved, but her Mars showed up in her blood, and they said, no wonder it's coming up, because even within that, it's like it makes complete sense of why she's going through this at the moment. And yeah, absolutely, trying to understand who we are, I think, is the biggest part of this journey and why we are here. And I think tackling our body and our minds and our souls from that perspective is absolutely imperative. And I love that these tools are coming in and starting to merge with so many different people. And yeah, it's an amazing to see. So I absolutely get excited with, just seeing that expansion of Western and natural holistic medicine starting, because I feel that there's a place for all. One is preventative, and the other one is acute. When it's needed, it's there.
I love that.
Yeah, I broke my leg in 5 places once, and I loved all my Reiki friends, but I needed a surgeon to put that plate in there and mend it together. So there's very much gratitude for that. And I feel that there's space for all of this medicine to live together, as long as there's that interconnection, which is important, that spiritual and science.
Yes. I was thinking to integrate all the information that we have talked, and also what we are discussing, and you are giving us this perspective on the corporate world and limiting beliefs. How can you summarize many of the approaches that you are doing with the corporate world in terms of visualizing for them what is unlimited ability, let's say, to flow in their own work or in their own corporate ladder, let's say?
I love that. It brings a lot of introspection into place. And I would answer that by saying the possibilities are endless. We live in a realm where anything is possible. So the road to getting there is unique for each and every person, therefore every business, every organization. And so we just have to be open to the possibilities. If I could work with a group that is just open to the possibilities, we can go so many places. So the first thing would be awareness and just the acceptance that anything is possible. And the second thing would be to have the sort of the courage, if you will, to sort of take those rocks and turn them over. We talked about sometimes it could be a little daunting to realize that, hey, there's some shadows. I think, David, you mentioned that. There's some shadow aspects of myself that I may not have been aware of, but maybe a team member or a coworker brought that into the forefront. And now that I'm faced with that, having that courage to say, I don't know how to tackle that. Let me lean on the expertise of someone else, because I know that it's possible that I can overcome that. Maybe, and I think you mentioned this, Natasha, about our ancestors and how we are literally carrying those DNA codes within our bodies, spiritually and physically, emotionally, everything. And so maybe there is something that pops up on a particular code or strand, and we're not prepared for how we feel about that. Like someone may say, I don't know why I feel this particular way about this, topic. Maybe it's not just you. Maybe there's an aunt or uncle somewhere down the line that was, that resolution and therefore heal that particular blockage. And so having the courage, I would say, is number 2, to deal with those things as they come up and sort of commit to a journey of healing, which is going to be holistic. Absolutely, including nutrition and rest and hydration, but also those energetic aspects. And then also from a physical perspective, what's going on in our bodies. And Natasha mentioned in my bio, I talk about carotenoids quite often. And technology that I use, this is much more physical in nature. There's a scan that can be done that's non-invasive. You place your hand on an instrument that can read the level of carotenoids, or in other words, antioxidants in our body, in our bloodstream. And are we getting that nutrition that we need from what we eat? Are we are we eating well? And so putting your hand on that scanner, getting a 30-second or less scan will let you know right at that time, am I doing the best that I can with my intake of food? And so from there, I can also suggest, certain foods to eat, which is always going to be the rainbow. What happens inside happens outside. So we're talking chakras or chakra diet. Sometimes I refer to it as, and with, committing sort of to that journey of healing, accountability would be the last portion of that. Staying on a target, it's very challenging. There's distractions coming from everywhere, right? There's pressures and challenges and decision making that can throw us off sometimes. Natasha, you mentioned how we've encountered these blue moons and super moons and retrogrades, and all kinds of things are happening. Even the planets are going through their journeys, right? Their transits, their healing aspects. And so we're impacted by that. And so we have to have an awareness of that could it be possible that when there's a full moon, there are more admissions to the hospital? That's scientific. Could it be possible that there are more car accidents when there's a full moon, or, when there's this type of alignment? It's possible. So we kind of put that accountability piece in there, and maybe surrounding ourselves in those communities that can support. Like, hey, I saw a post one day that said, is anybody else out there feeling sort of this drained energy? And then it was just beautiful to see that there were comments, a nice amount of comments of people saying, hey, me too. And so having that space to kind of bounce those ideas and, questions off of makes you feel as though you're not out there by yourself, which also can strengthen that commitment to that healing journey. And then therefore, walking down this path of preventive maintenance is what I call it, because you do have to maintain it every day. There might be a slight shift, right or left, but ultimately you're moving, you're in flow. So those are the things that I would suggest.
Thank you. Thank you, Soulara. I think that you made a great point in terms of this expansion of our abilities, our skills in this corporate scenery or arena, and how people can start understanding that they are not separated. And if we make the exercise that we did here in this conversation, the question about how medicine looks for you and for me in the future, if you make that exercise in a corporate world, how does your group of people looks like in a perfect world? Let's just talk about that, and let's just imagine from there how there are certain things that can be moved and why are they repeating, because those ancestral lineages in a corporate world come from the archaic way of doing things, no? which is very like you have to be here from 8 to 5 and you have to comply with these rules and you have to follow these procedures. And maybe no, maybe those procedures can be flexible. Maybe that schedule can be flexible as long as you commit to deliver what it is being requested for you. So being flexible, I think it's the key to understanding that we have so much more potential. No?
So true.
Thank you. Thank you, Soulara. Thank you, Natasha. I think this is a perfect way to close and to integrate the information. And of course, we will have more episodes with Soulara, and we will need to go beyond into this realm of the chakra system, which is also another interesting topic that we can touch on our next episode. And thank you, everyone, for being here, for listening. And we invite you to give our comments. And how can people find you, Soulara, or where can people find you?
Well, thanks so much for asking, David. And thank you so much again, you and Natasha. It's been an awesome time here talking about these subjects and especially how they apply to the corporate arena. So thank you so much for that. I can be found on Instagram at Reiki with Soulara. And Soulara is spelled Soulara. Also on Facebook for my business page, Soul Reiki Health Beauty Wellness. And then on LinkedIn, Soulara Sevier, Reiki Master Teacher.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for all those nuggets of wisdom you shared with us today.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you.